I know you're excited to hear how relationships can lead to successful business ventures. So, Derek, welcome.
Thank you so much. A very nice introduction. Thanks a bunch. I'm excited to talk today about entrepreneurship and the power of relationships. And the truth is, these are techniques and tools, and the stuff we're going to talk about could be applicable to any pursuit. Most pursuits or dreams or ambitions we have involve other human beings, and our connections and relationships, factor into those. I do specifically talk to some degree about how it applies to entrepreneurship. That's been what my entire life really has been involved with, and I know that that's very interesting to some of you as well. So that is the particulars of this one, but just you can think in terms of applying this to a lot of different things. What is a relationship? And I think the definition of that is, it could be the relationship between entities or organizations, but for the purposes of today, we're talking about how two people are connected. And that ranges widely, right? It could be very, very casual to a deeply emotional connection, a family member, and they're not all equal. And we'll talk some more, about the nature of that. So it is my experience that the relationship network that an entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial team have and that they grow and cultivate is a big differentiator. And it may very well be, in many case studies, the reason that a venture was successful. I certainly meet, especially the inventor type entrepreneur, if they are a deeply technical person and really not a people person, that can be a real challenge for them. And some really brilliant ideas don't always see the light of day because there's no network of human beings around that entrepreneur, inventor idea, factory. So if you're not that, and some of the things I might share today might be difficult for a deeply introverted person to emulate or to put into use. Well, that may just be your clue to say, you know what, I want to have a partner or a key employee or a couple of advisors, could make up for some of it around me or partnered with me that will have some of that piece, because then they'll bring that to the table. You're recognizing that it's a valuable piece and that great products are not always successful. And I think people and our relationships with them are the key. Well, what kind of people am I talking about? The relationships that an entrepreneur needs to rely on are many. There are obvious ones like, well, I'm going to recruit some employees. Those are relationships. I'm going to recruit an investor or some investors. Well, those are definitely relationships. In fact, the more, if you're going to raise money, which is something I've done quite a bit of, that's all about relationship development, and trust is going to be a huge factor there. But there's lots of others, mentors, advisors, customers. Those are relationships. Unless you have a consumer product that you can sell essentially without a relationship with the customer, although a lot of brands still have a relationship. It's not person to person, it's company to person. But nonetheless, most things, if your product is technical like most of mine are, it's going to be a relationship sell. You're going to be developing and cultivating a connection / build into a relationship with someone at a company, and they by themselves or with a team of other relationships are going to choose whether to buy your product. So all these things are about human being connections. They're not about the technical specifications of a product or the features of a product. Those are, if they're great, that's an awesome advantage, but then you're going to have to layer on the human relationships. So I want to give a couple of just caveats up front, though. Don't judge books by cover. So, when you meet people, and in the average lifespan, I've read that we meet anywhere between 10 and 80,000 people in our life. You can't treat them all the same. And my system is not one where you're like, well, here's what you do with every single person that you meet. It doesn't scale. Everyone is a valuable human being. And so I'm always very cautious when I talk about things in maybe a clinical or systematic way, that someone doesn't get the impression that I'm saying this person's a more important person. Now, they may be more important to you for what you're trying to do, but they're not a more important human being. Nothing in my system does that. And so that manifests itself in different ways, and I'll try to touch on that later. You never know when or how people you meet and people you have connections with may become valuable. I have a long game view, which is I want to know lots of people, and I don't know when or if, and it doesn't ever have to be the case that someone will be valuable to me, but they might be. I'm not going to predispose myself that they're not going to. However, we're going to have to prioritize, and we'll talk about that. And here is one particular study of Robin Dunbar, professor of evolutionary psychology, and he would say in his study would say 150 friendships. is the most a human being can maintain. And that if they're close friendships based on emotional connection, it's 5. It's a much, much lesser number. So I don't want to use this. I'm not using this as the absolute example. There are, a variety of studies, but they tend to support each other in that the richer the connection and the more it's an emotional based connection, a multi-layered connection, it's going to be a much smaller number. It's going to go down as those factors go up. So I'm talking about connections, not just, the word relationship, which kind of sounds like more. Connections can be very, very loose. Again, we might not have even met. We connect on LinkedIn. We're a connection. And we could agree that that's extremely weak potentially, but it is the beginnings of something. So what is a connection? It's just how two people might be have contact with each other, any kind of contact. So again, that does not talk about the strength of that. It just says, what's a connection? There are lots and lots and lots of different types of connections. And you do, and I will touch on, you get into, okay, how do I categorize these? Certainly a connection that's powerful and influential and could open doors for you, that might be a valuable connection. And so you have to be cognizant of that and be looking at the kinds of people you're meeting. So I call this the network connection or the connection network hierarchy. You can see Dunbar's numbers at the top. Close friendships, close relationships, close friendships. You're going to have less of those. Hence why it's a pyramid. There's a lot more people in the lower category. People who may know me. Now that's interesting. You look at the bottom of the pyramid. So how's that? Well, if you post high quality articles online or video blogs, you may have people that you have a connection and they even feel they have a relationship with you and you don't even know their name. So it's possible for that to be the case at that end of the spectrum. That's not everybody's doing that, but that is possible to have tens of thousands of connections that have more meaning than just than the bare minimum. They might invest a lot in their feeling about how connected they are with you, but that'll probably have a lot to do with how you communicate and the things that you share with all those connections. I like the people I know, at least to some degree, category, and the friends category, the middle 2 blocks. That's where there's a lot of room to play and where you might adopt a practice or two and enhance what you're doing now, even if you don't have a goal to maybe go to the length that someone like I've chosen to go with this sort of thing.
Okay, all right. Yes, we do. We have several questions. So our first question comes from Tish. She says, hello, how important is it for a small business to start an email serve, especially since now people are getting bombarded with emails?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping you're implying, because I'm instantly a newsletter came to mind, so it's like email serve, you're going to send something out to all of them. And the truth is I go long periods of time where I don't send a regular communication. They're a big load to make them good, to make them quality. They take a lot of effort. And so even sometimes I aspire to them and don't do them. Only when I've got support and I've got a team do I say, guys, we should probably be doing a regular communication, some sort of blast from us on a periodic basis. But I don't take those on by myself. So, when I'm starting a brand new startup, and at this point I am a thought leader in this space, I could send a regular newsletter out on cybersecurity or on entrepreneurship, but I don't. It's a heavy lift to make them good. And to your point, people are inundated with those. So I spend my time and energy typically elsewhere. Now, making a very thoughtful post in LinkedIn, I am trying to up that, because then I'm putting that out to my 14 or 15,000 connections, and any one of them might see that, and so I do that. But I don't promise to do it every Monday or every first Monday of the month, which is a pressure point, right? I might not get to it that much. I do it when I can, and I'm putting pressure on myself to do it more frequently than I am.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Our next question comes from Drew, and it reads, do you see any professional do you use any personal CRMs or tools to manage relationships?
Yes. And so, we've used a couple different CRMs, and that's super subjective, right? Price, cost, do you have the team, do you or someone you can afford, or someone who's maybe helping you for free, is awesome. If you got somebody, close to you that already knows how to use a particular CRM, that might be the reason to use that CRM, because I have invested sometimes in some different parts of the last 20 years, but found there wasn't really somebody in my close orbit that knew how to manipulate it. That can lead to some wasted money. So pick a project, pick a tool that you can use. or that someone close to you can use and manipulate. And that can be great, because then all this data that you're entering, if you don't have that, and there were many years, and I still track some stuff in Excel,
Yeah.
it's a dummy CRM, but you can do some of that. And so I have some tabs. I have a tracker, and I have lots and lots of different tabs. And so when I'm doing all the stuff that I'm doing, my assistant will get text messages or voice memos or emails, and I'll tell her to put somebody in one of those tabs. Now, some of those also need to get entered into CRM, but there's a quick spreadsheet, a Google sheet that I can go and look at and scan and say, okay, what are the 13 people in that category? And so I think, yeah, if you can do a CRM, do it. But if you can't do a CRM, then do something. You can't keep it in your head, and you can't keep it in email. It's got to be something you're organized.
Yeah. And for those who are not familiar with CRMs, that stands for Customer Relationship Management Tools, and they can find more on Google, I'm sure. Okay. What types of networking events do you find the most beneficial? That's a great question.
Yeah, there are a million to choose from. It's a great question, because you could go crazy. When I lived in Silicon Valley, I could go out if I wanted to every day and every night to an event. And Atlanta boasts, quite a few opportunities too of various types, and you can find them on meetup.com. You can find your affinity groups on Meetup. Like, oh, look at that. There's a group that meets every month on this thing that I'm really into. And that's certainly, you're going to meet people at that. So I think you have to judge every single one. You have to make a decision on your time. When I was younger and had no family and no children, I was constantly doing that. When I got older, now I'm more careful. I still do a fair amount of it, but I'm more careful about, how often I'm doing it and where I'm doing it. Certain conferences, though, I'm going to do them because I know at that conference, there's lots of people I'm going to be able to see. So it's going to be a concentrated couple of days with a lot of opportunities. You couldn't possibly meet with all those people in all the cities they live in. So I think pick carefully, do as much as you can afford time and money to do, and don't be afraid to disconnect from a group that is low yield. You're like, oh, it's taking time and money or an hour drive, and it's not ever valuable to me and I don't enjoy it. Well, maybe that's one that you say, I'm making a quality decision to discontinue my involvement with that particular networking opportunity. But I'll leave you with this thought on this. Every time I get lazy and I stay at home pre-COVID, I stay at home and don't go out, my luck seems to go down. Things don't happen as magically as they used to happen. That's because when I'm out, I'm interacting with human beings. And so my wife and I chuckle about it. She knows. She's like, you've been pre-COVID again. You've been home for a couple of weeks. You always say once you start to be home and not going out, you should, to bump you and say, go out, because that's where the magic occurs. And that's true.
And like you said, you got to navigate, you got to cultivate those relationships. So you got to get out and do it.
Yep.
Great. This next question has to do with COVID, as a matter of fact. It says, I'm interested in reaching out to other small business owners in my same niche and collaborate to see how we can thrive during COVID. But fear keeps me from reaching out because of competition. How could I get around that?
Well, I would say definitely reach out. So I am part of a number of groups. Entrepreneurs organization is one that I'm heavily involved in. I've been in board seats in 3 cities. I've been in 3 different chapters. Now, that particular peer group of entrepreneurs requires $1 million in revenue to be invited to be a member. But there are others. We actually also have an accelerator program with EO. I should mention it because that's only $250,000 in revenue to be part of that. Putting that aside, there are other groups that don't have those revenue requirements. And I think I have always erred on the side of network, meet people, connect. I get to control what I'm going to say. And most entrepreneurs are over concerned about oversharing. If you have a secret formula, keep it close to your vest, keep it in your pocket, and don't just share that without the proper disclosure agreements. But generally speaking, a concept or an idea area, people overprotect that versus underprotect that. Most ideas are being worked on also by other people. And so most people don't find their idea just stolen. And if you've got secret sauce, like, oh, I'm going to go into, virtual dog care. I don't know how you do it, but it might really fly off the shelves right now. Don't say exactly how that's going to work, but just say, that's what I'm going to do. Yes, you are disclosing an idea, but most people don't have that time or energy to just steal an idea and figure it all out. Now, if you give them a 10-page document that blow by blow by blow, it's here's my business plan with all the details, then you've given too much.
Gotcha. All right. Great advice. I have one final question. It says, what advice would you give to a 21-year-old student entrepreneur who is shy and new to building relationships?
Practice makes perfect. So I would say, don't set any goals that will make you uncomfortable or feel like you haven't, achieved what you set out to do. Just start practicing something. Say, okay, what am I comfortable doing? Or what's right beyond what I'm comfortable? So I'm comfortable hanging out in a living room with 5 people I know really, really, really well. Okay. I'm not comfortable going to Starbucks and just randomly talking to people. Okay, well, that's a big leap. But you know what? I have a hobby. And if I go on meetup.com, it looks like there are 82 people that also like underwater basket weaving in Atlanta. And that's my business area. Let's say I'm going to build baskets, the best underwater baskets ever. I'm going to join that meetup and I'm going to go to one of the meetings. It feels like a big lift. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm going to go. And what do you know? People are super friendly because we have an affinity or a nexus to underwater basket weaving. So I selected a group to network with. Student groups, lots of student groups on campuses are associated with universities, like the one that came up at the beginning of this one.
Right, CEO, right.
Yeah. And so you join those and say, and the ice is broken versus randomly, walking up to a stranger and saying, I'm just going to start a conversation. That can be hard, especially with feelings of introvert, if someone's an introvert or feeling shy, that can be a challenge. I understand it. And so you just pick some things you can do and start chipping away at that. So, okay, I'm going to have one conversation at this, event with somebody I do not know, and I'm going to keep the conversation going for a few minutes of back and forth. I'm going to ask them 2 questions. Hopefully they'll ask me 2 questions. You can have a little formula and just say, I did it. Now I'm going to go back to kind of listening, but I did that. Next time I'm going to do 2 of those. And so you can learn, a lot of this can be learned. You can overcome fears by experience.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, that concludes our Q&A.